Lynk is building a small satellite network that links all 5.2 billion cell phone users on the planet with universal broadband connectivity. The existing phone in your pocket will stay connected everywhere. No change to your phone.
It's almost magical now that you can connect to the phone without any change of the phone. That the phone in your pocket today can be connected everywhere. And that's what we figured out how to do.
As we fight the pandemic across the world, digital connectivity is more critical than ever. Lynk connects rural and remote communities to emergency services and disaster relief. Emergency notifications and critical health information will reach everyone. To build this technology, we started from a simple observation.
I was looking at this data across Liberia and Sierra Leone. For the BGAN units, they rolled out during the Ebola crisis. And a lot of times they were only ever turned on and texted from. So if we can just text from a phone, an unmodified phone, I said we could make a difference in how you respond to these kinds of crises.
She was the critical spark of having us focus on the phone. We stopped working on everything else and we just focused on that. Basically polish that apple. All the friction and the problems, step by step, the team has basically eliminated it all.
Lynk's core technology is now proven. On February 24th, 2020, Lynk sent the world's first text message from a satellite in orbit to an ordinary standard mobile phone on Earth.
Got it! Yes! Oh, yeah! Oh, yeah.
With the core technology proven, Lynk is focused on building broadband connectivity to improve lives all over the world.
I'm actually responsible for inventing some of the core IP associated with how it is that we're going to do what we're planning to do, connecting unmodified phones to satellites. Not only are we building satellites, which is cool in and of itself, but we're enabling a service that's very meaningful for remote and rural and disconnected people.
With our services, from low band to broadband, we'll enable full economic participation, connecting hundreds of millions to mobile money services, provide 2 billion people living on smallholder farms with access to critical tools and information for the farm, empower women who are more likely to be isolated in rural areas by providing affordable connectivity everywhere, provide ubiquitous coverage to the 60 million people in America who live in rural communities. Lynk has signed testing agreements with dozens of mobile network operators serving at least 1.5 billion wireless subscribers in more than 60 countries. Connecting people changes lives and saves lives. We will connect all 7.8 billion people on the planet, everywhere.
We've seen Lynk has signed several commercial contracts now, including starting a flagship carriers program. Can you explain why the mobile operators are so excited about Lynk service?
What we're finding among the first in flagship partners is really they're feeling the pressure of being able to deliver that quality service to their customers, whether it's the last mile or the customer that finds themselves in a coverage gap. In addition to providing that quality of service to those customers, they're concerned about resilient communications should their system go down due to an extreme weather event.
Okay, so the technology itself, is this exciting and new, or is it same old, or how does that integrate? How does that work?
What they're finding about it that's exciting and new is that it's direct to the mobile handset already in their customer's pocket. It doesn't require an additional user terminal, and for our MNO partner, it doesn't require any modification to their network. So it's exciting and it's new, but it's also same old, because they just bring their 3GPP compliant network and their customers just bring that handset that they already own into the mix, and Lynk just provides that connectivity infrastructure with our satellite constellation.
Gotcha. From an integration standpoint for the mobile operators, how does that look? I mean, obviously, the more seamless it is, the better it is for them. But
we integrate as almost the same as a traditional roaming partner would for them.
The technology itself, it's patented, and you have some space satellites testing?
Yes. So the core IP is patented, and We are testing on actually our 5th satellite on orbit. This is our 2nd free flyer. It was launched in June. And essentially what Lynk does is we take the traditional terrestrial cell tower and we move it into orbit. So the base station is really now on the satellite. And we compensate for the 2 parameters, and this is the core IP that we patented. We compensate for the Doppler shift and the extended range time delay, because now you're moving, the tower is moving relative to you. And instead of the tower being like 20 kilometers, our towers are like 470 kilometers.
And the phones don't seem to mind that change in distance?
No, actually, we've registered hundreds of phones in the United States, the United Kingdoms, and the Bahamas. And one of our very first M&O partners, Aliv in the Bahamas, has independently validated the technology.
Wow. So from the satellite, you're covering the whole ground area. How do you ensure that there's no harmful interference with the terrestrial network?
That's a great question. So the FCC requires us to coordinate with mobile network operator partners that are within the spot beam for our testing in the United States. So both Verizon and AT&T monitor the tests. They're given the testing schedule, and they've reported no issues of interference with their network.
So one of the things that we've seen in surveys is that people like cellular coverage, mobile coverage, because it gives them peace of mind, especially for family members. So how does Lynk's system provide that resiliency when the terrestrial network goes down or in places where it can't reach?
Well, whether you're traveling outside of a coverage gap or whether kind of the coverage gap comes to you because of an extreme weather event like a tornado or a hurricane or a man-made disaster, like we saw with the bombing in Nashville in Christmas last year, all of a sudden the terrestrial towers get quiet because they go down. And our satellites in space then become the loudest signal. So your phone will seamlessly roam onto our network, just like your phone roams onto other networks when you travel outside the United States or in areas where your current provider doesn't have service.
So who's going to be the integrator? They still need someone to integrate it all.
It's an interesting kind of
I've worked on hurricanes and earthquakes in scenarios where the entire network is being destroyed by the storm. So there's no towers, there's no electricity. It's very difficult to get on the island to restore services sometimes. So with the system, airborne system, a satellite, you can get the service there very, very quickly in the aftermath of a storm. The terrestrial network is destroyed or substantially destroyed. The Lynk system or a similar system can restore coverage quite quickly because it's overhead. Of course, the secondary use is the maritime situation where the terrestrial services extend out to sea, and that's a more day-to-day service as well. So it has a double benefit: disaster recovery and, of course, the day-to-day. Or in the Bahamas, not so much the case because we've got coverage on pretty much every island, but certainly with the coverage between the islands is very sparse because you're out of range of the cell towers. After the disaster in Port-au-Prince, the place was completely trashed, and we were running around like crazy putting up a cell on wheels, and we managed to put one cell site back on air again. 5 days after the disaster, one guy managed to get his cell phone still working and texted his sister to say, "I'm buried under this building." And the guy's alive today because someone put a cow up, 2 streets over from him. The fact that the Lynk service uses your existing terminal, you don't need a special expensive VSAT terminal or a new terminal that costs thousands of dollars. Your ordinary handset will work. And that's going to be a big difference when it comes to making this thing more accessible to not the mega yachts and not the container ships, to the smaller person who still wants to have service when they're out to sea. It's a network in the sky because it does have the ability to do local switching, which makes a big difference from other sort of schemes I've looked at where it's just the cell phone. It still needs the ground-based system to support it. In some ways, the architecture of the Lynk, it can be a network in a box in the sky, which makes a big difference on the engineering level. In praise of Lynk, the great thing about the technology is the fact it's using the cell phone, which is everybody's pocket. It's one of the big plays I've made before in some other research I've done. You're not relying on a terminal that needs a smart antenna that needs a special power supply or it needs to be pointed at the sky in a certain direction. It's in everybody's pocket. 3.5 billion cell phones in the world. And especially with your system, with that fact that it is a cell phone network in the sky, I'm sure they'd find some very interesting use cases that we couldn't even imagine for the problems that you could solve with them.
So when a hurricane comes through, or the fires out in California, what we've seen in Puerto Rico, for example, with Maria, it just devastates the terrestrial the network. And Lynk can just fill in right there and serve all those folks.
Absolutely. We're that instant hot backup to meet your customers' needs and to meet emergency responders' requirements in order to respond to these disasters.
Can you talk a little bit more about emergency responders' needs and how we can fit that role?
Well, Lynk is very excited to be able to serve their first responder community, because when these incidents occur, it's often the self-organization that occurs in the moments to hours after an accident or after a natural disaster, which actually saves the most lives. So I was actually a paramedic and a firefighter for 6 years, and I've lived that experience where your town is hit by a tornado and all of a sudden comms go down. And as a first responder, you don't know where to go. You don't know which hospitals are open. You don't know how to request emergency assets. And just being able to connect those first responders and give them priority so they can have situational awareness will mean that their response is more effective. And when it comes to fighting wildfires out west, it's kind of been referred to as kind of that holy grail, to know where the fire is and to know where your assets are, whether those are firefighters or equipment. And with the Lynk system, you can really push the decision-making to the edge, because those firefighters on the front line will be able to give real-time awareness of where the fire is. And back to the command post, you'll be able to give kind of the health and well-being of where those firefighters are. So that two-way comms that doesn't exist right now is absolutely critical, because instead of having a wildfire season like we used to out west, now it's almost a year-long endeavor. And this year, unfortunately, in California, they've experienced what we call a gigafire, where just under 1 million acres is on fire at any given time. So those assets are really stretched thin. And Lynk is very excited about the potential to serve emergency responders in these types of incidents, and also to serve the civilian. So one of the things that we can do in California, where they have to do the rolling blackouts and actually take down cell towers, is we can provide smart, targeted emergency alerting to citizens that might lose their coverage, whether because they're in a normal coverage gap or whether because they've lost those traditional terrestrial towers. And with these smart targeted emergency alerts, people can be given timely and relative evacuation information. And so I think that we not only will serve the emergency responder community by making their response more effective, by helping to keep them safe, but we're also going to help them with their interactions with the public in order to move people out of areas of concern more quickly and more effectively.
Great. And when you say relative evacuation orders, how would that play out in practice?
Well, one of the things we can do with the Lynk technology is we can actually draw a polygon around a certain set of cell phone users and give them very targeted instructions, like to drive north on a highway. And we can draw a polygon around another set of cell phone users and tell them to drive south. And in this way, you can avoid bottlenecks. You can also give them, because you're getting more real-time information out to that customer, out to that citizen about where they should go, about the safest routes for their evacuation.
Okay, and then are there any concerns about, with the fires in particular, you get smoke and then you have tree cover or other weather events? Does that impact the Lynk service at all?
Because of the frequencies we're using, they're very transparent to the atmosphere. So we kind of call it line of sight plus. So it is like traditional terrestrial or traditional satellite where you want line of sight, but we get better penetration. So you should be able to get Lynk service in a car. We know you can get it under tree coverage and under tent, but we're still building out all the conditions and characterizing them for the successful, reliable service. And so we'll be able to bring that to our mobile network operator partner so that they can help market the service to their customers so that they can know what to expect in the quality of service.
All right, great. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us?
Thank you so much. We're very excited to be able to address the regulatory community and the mobile network operator community that that attends the Spectrum Management Conference. And we look forward to hearing from you and continuing the dialogue.